The cry came without warning, a sound so vast and alien that it seemed to tear through the fabric of reality itself. It was not a scream nor a roar, but something in between, a low, resonant vibration that hummed in the bones of every living creature on Earth. In New York, Dr. Elena Vasquez, an astrophysicist at Columbia University, dropped her coffee mug as the sound reverberated through her apartment. The ceramic shattered, but she barely noticed. Her mind raced, trying to categorize the phenomenon. It wasn't seismic nor atmospheric. It was other across the globe. In a small village in Kenya, a young boy named Caprono froze mid-step, his eyes wide as the cry echoed across the savannah. His grandmother, a woman of few words but deep wisdom, whispered a single phrase: "The world is calling for help." In the hours that followed, the cry became the only topic of conversation. Social media exploded with theories: aliens, divine intervention, a secret government experiment gone wrong. But for General Marcus Holt, stationed at the Pentagon, the sound was not a mystery to be solved by amateurs. It was a threat that required immediate action. Holt, a man with a reputation for cold efficiency, convened an emergency meeting of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. His sharp blue eyes scanned the room as he laid out the facts. The cry had originated from deep space, but its exact source was unknown. Satellite data showed no anomalies, no incoming objects, no signs of life. Yet the sound had been real, and its effects were already being felt. Reports poured in of power outages, communication failures, and strange behavior in animals. Holt's voice was steady, but the tension in the room was palpable. "We need answers," he said, "and we need them yesterday." Elena Vasquez found herself at the center of the storm. Within hours of the cry, she was contacted by NASA and flown to their headquarters in Houston. There, she joined a team of the world's leading scientists, all equally baffled by the phenomenon. Elena's expertise in astrophysics made her a key player, but it was her ability to think outside the box that set her apart. As the team pored over data, she proposed a radical idea. The cry was not a sound in traditional sense, but a form of communication, a message. Her theory was met with skepticism, but as the evidence mounted, even the most hardened skeptics began to reconsider. The cry had a pattern, a rhythm that suggested intent. But what was it trying to say? Meanwhile, in a remote corner of Siberia, a Russian military outpost picked up an unusual signal. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it matched the frequency of the cry. The outpost commander, Colonel Dmitry Volkov, a grizzled veteran with a distrust of anything he couldn't shoot, ordered his men to investigate. What they found defied explanation: a massive metallic structure buried beneath the ice. It was ancient, its surface etched with symbols that no one could decipher. Volkov's report reached Holt within minutes, and the general knew this was the break they needed. He ordered a team to Siberia immediately, with Elena Vasquez at its helm. As Elena boarded the military transport plane, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something monumental. The cry, the structure, it all pointed to a truth that was both exhilarating and terrifying. She thought of Caprono, the boy in Kenya, and his grandmother's words. Was the world really calling for help? Or was it warning them of something far worse? The plane's engines roared to life, and Elena closed her eyes, steeling herself for what lay ahead. The cry had brought the might of Earth's military to its feet, but it was only the beginning. Somewhere, out in the vastness of space, something was waiting, and it was no longer content to remain silent. The section ended Elena en route to Siberia, the mystery deepening and the stakes rising. The cry has united humanity in a way nothing else could, but it has also exposed their vulnerability. The stage is set for discovery, conflict, and the unraveling of a truth that will change everything. The military transport plane touched down on a makeshift runway carved into the Siberian tundra, its engines whining as the cold bit through even the thickest layers of clothing. Elena Vasquez stepped onto the snow-covered ground, her breath visible in the frigid air. The landscape was desolate, a vast expanse of white broken only by the distant outline of the Russian outpost and the faint glow of floodlights illuminating the excavation site. Colonel Dmitry Volkov greeted her with a curt nod, his face weathered by years of harsh conditions and harder decisions. "Welcome to middle of nowhere," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "You're here because General Holt thinks you can make sense of this thing. I hope he's right." Elena followed Volkov to the site, her boots crunching in the snow. The structure loomed ahead, its metallic surface glinting faintly under the lights. It was larger than she had imagined, easily the size of a football stadium, though much of it remained buried beneath the ice. The symbols etched into its surface were unlike anything she had ever seen, geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. She felt a thrill of excitement mixed with unease. This was no natural formation. It was designed, crafted by intelligence far beyond human understanding. Inside the makeshift command center, a team of scientists and engineers worked around the clock, analyzing every inch of the structure. Elena was introduced to Dr. Raj Patel, a linguist specializing in ancient languages, and Lieutenant Mei Chun, an engineer with a knack for solving impossible problems. Together, they formed an unlikely trio, each bringing a unique perspective to the mystery. Patel was convinced the symbols were a form of language, a code waiting to be cracked. Chun, on the other hand, was more interested in the structure's construction. "This material," she said, running a glove hand over a sample, "it's not just metal. It's alive in a way. It responds to stimuli, almost like it's aware of us." Elena's mind raced as she absorbed the information, the cry, the structure, the living metal. It all pointed to a civilization far more advanced than humanity. But why had they left this here? And why now, after millennia buried beneath the ice, had it begun to awaken? She shared her thoughts with Volkov, who listened intently before issuing a series of orders. "Double the guard around the perimeter," he barked. "No one gets in or out without my authorization. And get me Holt on the line. He needs to know what we're dealing with." As night fell, the temperature plummeted, but the work continued. Elena, Patel, and Chin huddled around a table, poring over data and debating theories. Patel had managed to isolate a repeating sequence in the symbols, which he believed was a kind of key. "If we can decode this," he said, his voice tinged with excitement, "we might be able to communicate with it." Chun, ever the pragmatist, cautioned against rushing. "We don't know what we're dealing with," she said. "For all we know, this thing could be a weapon, or worse." Their debate was interrupted by a sudden tremor that shook the ground beneath them. The lights flickered, and for a moment, the structure seemed to pulse with an inner light. Elena felt a strange sensation, as if the air itself had grown heavier. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the tremor stopped. The room fell silent, the tension palpable. Volkov burst in, his face grim. "We got movement," he said. "Outside." Elena followed him to the perimeter, where soldiers stood at the ready, their weapons trained on the structure. At first, she saw nothing but snow and ice. Then, slowly, a section of the structure began to shift, the metal folding in on itself to reveal a dark, gaping entrance. A collective gasp went up from the assembled team. Volkov raised a hand, signaling his men to hold their fire. "Stay here," he said to Elena, but she shook her head. "If this is what I think it is," she said, "you'll need me." Together, they approached the entrance, their breath visible in the cold air. The interior was dark, but as they stepped inside, lights began to flicker on, illuminating a vast chamber filled with strange machinery and more of the shifting symbols. Elena felt a surge of awe and fear. This was no mere artifact. It was a gateway, a portal to something far beyond human comprehension. At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, atop which rested a single, glowing orb. Elena approached it cautiously, her heart pounding. As she reached out to touch it, the orb flared to life, projecting a holographic image into the air. It was a star map, but unlike any she had ever seen. The symbols around the edges began to move, forming words in a language she couldn't understand. Yet, Patel, who had followed them in, gasped. "It's a message," he said. "A warning." Before Elena could respond, the ground shook again, more violently this time. The lights flickered, and the hologram dissolved into static. Volkov grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the exit. "We need to go. Now." As they emerged into the cold night air, The structure began to close, the entrance sealing itself with a final, resonant hum. Elena looked back, her mind racing with questions. What had they just witnessed? And what did it mean for the future of humanity? The cry had brought them here, to the edge of discovery, and perhaps to the brink of disaster. But one thing was certain, the story was far from over. Somewhere, out in the vastness of space, something was waiting, and it was no longer content to remain silent. The return to the outpost was a blur of shouted orders and hurried footsteps. Elena's mind churned with the implications of what they had seen. The holographic star map, the shifting symbols, a glowing orb. It all pointed to a message, but one they couldn't yet decipher. Colonel Volkov wasted no time, barking orders to fortify the perimeter and prepare for the possibility of an attack. "We don't know what that thing is capable of," he growled, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Assume the worst." Elena found herself back in the command center, surrounded by the hum of computers and the tense murmurs of scientists and soldiers. Dr. Raj Patel was already at work, his fingers flying across a keyboard as he attempted to translate the symbols they had recorded. Lieutenant Machin stood nearby, her arms crossed as she studied a 3D model of the structure on a monitor. "It's not just a machine," she said, her voice low but urgent. "It's a system, and it's active." Elena joined Patel, her eyes scanning the lines of text he had transcribed. "Any progress?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Patel nodded, though his expression was grim. "It's a warning," he said, "but it's also a countdown. Something's coming, and we're running out of time." The word sent a chill through Elena. She thought of the cry, the way it had reverberated across the globe, shaking humanity to its core. Was this structure the source? Or was it merely a piece of a larger puzzle? Before she could voice her thoughts, the ground beneath them shuddered violently, sending equipment crashing to the floor. The lights flickered, and for a moment, the room was plunged into darkness. When the power returned, the monitors displayed a single, pulsing symbol, a symbol Patel recognized immediately. "It's the same one from a pedestal," he said, his voice trembling. "It's activating." Outside, the structure began to emit a low, resonant hum, the sound eerily similar to the cry that had started it all. Soldiers scrambled to their positions, their weapons trained on the massive metallic form. Volkov stood at the forefront, his face a mask of determination. "Hold your fire until I give the order," he commanded, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. Elena watched from a distance, her heart pounding. She knew they were standing on the precipice of something monumental, something that would change the course of history. The hum grew louder, more intense, until it seemed to vibrate through every molecule of the air. Then, with a deafening crack, the structure split open, revealing a blinding light that forced everyone to shield their eyes. When the light faded, a figure emerged, tall, humanoid, but unmistakably alien. Its skin shimmered like liquid metal, and its eyes glowed with an otherworldly intelligence. The soldiers tensed, their fingers hovering over their triggers, but Volkov raised a hand, signaling them to wait. The alien stepped forward, its movements fluid and deliberate. It raised a hand, and a holographic image appeared in the air, a star map similar to the one Elena had seen inside the structure. But this time, the symbols were accompanied by a voice, deep and resonant, speaking in a language no one understood. Patel's eyes widened. "It's trying to communicate," he said, his voice filled with awe. "It's showing us something." Elena stepped forward, her curiosity overriding her fear. "What is it saying?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Patel hesitated, his brow furrowed in concentration. "It's a warning," he said slowly. "A warning about something called the convergence. It's coming, and when it arrives, it will consume everything." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Elena felt a surge of dread, but also a flicker of hope. If the alien was trying to warn them, then perhaps there was still a chance to stop whatever was coming. She turned to Volkov, her eyes pleading. "We need to listen," she said. "We need to understand." Volkov nodded, though his expression remained grim. "Do what you can," he said, "but be ready for anything." As the alien continued to communicate, Patel worked feverishly to translate its message. The convergence, it seemed, was an event of cosmic proportions, a collision of dimensions that would tear apart the fabric of reality. The structure, the cry, the alien, it was all part of a plan to prepare humanity for what was to come. But time was running out. Elena felt a surge of determination. They had been given a chance, however slim, to avert disaster. She turned to Chun, her mind racing. "We need to find a way to amplify the signal," she said. "If we can broadcast a warning, maybe we can unite the world." Chun nodded, already pulling up schematics on her tablet. "I'll need access to the structure's power source," she said. "But if we can tap into it, we might be able to create a global broadcast." The plan was risky, but it was their only hope. As Chun and her team worked to connect the structure's energy to a makeshift transmitter, Elena and Patel continued to decode the alien's message. The more they learned, the more urgent the situation became. The convergence was not just a threat to Earth. It was a threat to the entire universe. Finally, after hours of grueling work, the transmitter was ready. Chin gave the signal, and the structure's energy surged through the device, sending a pulse of light into the sky. The alien watched silently, its glowing eyes reflecting the brilliance of the signal. For a moment, everything was still. Then, the ground shook again, more violently than before. The structure began to collapse, its metallic surface crumbling into dust. The alien turned to Elena, its voice echoing in her mind. "You have done well," it said, "but the journey is just beginning." With those final words, the alien dissolved into light, its form merging with the signal as it spread across the globe. The cry returned, but this time, it was different. A call to action, a rallying cry for humanity to unite against the coming storm. Elena stood amidst the ruins of the structure, her heart heavy but resolute. They had uncovered the truth, but the battle was far from over. The convergence was coming, and with it, a challenge that would test the limits of human courage and ingenuity. But for the first time, Elena felt a glimmer of hope. They were not alone, and together, they might just have a chance. The section ends with humanity united by the alien's warning, the stage set for a cosmic struggle that will define their future. The cry that brought the might of Earth's military had become a call to arms, a beacon of hope in the face of unimaginable danger. The story is far from over, but the fight has just begun. The signal from the Siberian structure rippled across the globe, a cascade of light and sound that pierced through every barrier, geographical, political, and technological. In New York, the holographic warning materialized above Times Square, its alien symbols flickering into a language every onlooker could understand. In Beijing, the same message played out over the skyline, halting traffic and drawing crowds. In Nairobi, Kiprono and his grandmother stood in awe as the cry echoed once more, this time carrying not fear, but a call to action. The world held its breath, united by a single undeniable truth. The convergence was real and it was coming. Back in Siberia, Elena Vasquez stood amidst the ruins of the structure, her breath visible in the freezing air. The alien's final words echoed in her mind. Asterisk, "The journey is just beginning." Asterisk, she turned to Colonel Volkov, who was barking orders into a radio, his voice sharp and urgent. "We need to mobilize every resource we have," he said, his eyes scanning the horizon as if expecting an attack at any moment. "If this convergence is as bad as they say, we're going to need more than just soldiers." Elena nodded, her mind racing. The alien's message had been clear, but the details were still shrouded in mystery. What exactly was a convergence? How much time did they have? And most importantly, how could they stop it? She found Dr. Raj Patel and Lieutenant Machin huddled over a portable workstation, their faces illuminated by the glow of a monitor. Patel was deciphering the alien's language at a breakneck pace, while Chin worked to stabilize the remnants of the structure's energy source. "We've got fragments of their technology," Chin said, her voice tinged with both exhaustion and excitement. "If we can replicate even a fraction of it, we might stand a chance." Elena joined them, her eyes scanning the data. The alien's message had included coordinates, points scattered across the globe where similar structures were believed to exist. "They're not just warning us," she realized aloud. "They're giving us the tools to fight back. These structures, they're part of a network, a defense system, Volkov overheard and immediately began coordinating with military leaders worldwide. "We need teams at every location," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Scientists, engineers, soldiers, anyone who can help. This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about proving we're worth saving." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Elena, Patel, and Chun were flown to a secret facility deep within the Swiss Alps, where the world's brightest minds had gathered to decode the alien technology. The facility was a hive of innovation, with teams working around the clock to unlock the secrets of the structures. Elena found herself at the center of it all, her expertise in astrophysics making her a key figure in the effort. But it was her ability to see the bigger picture that set her apart. She understood that this wasn't just a scientific challenge. It was a test of humanity's ability to come together in the face of extinction. As the teams worked, reports began to pour in from the other structures. Each one had activated, revealing new pieces of the puzzle. In the Amazon rainforest, a team discovered a device capable of manipulating gravity. In the Australian outback, another team found a machine that could generate energy from seemingly nothing. And in the depths of the Pacific Ocean, a structure was uncovered that appeared to be a gateway, a portal to another dimension. The discoveries were staggering, but they came with a price. The more they learned, the clearer it became that the convergence was not just a threat. It was an inevitability. The only question was whether they could prepare in time. Elena spent long hours in the facility's observation deck, staring out at the snow-capped peaks as she wrestled with the enormity of their task. Patel found her there one evening, his face drawn but determined. "We're close," he said, holding up a tablet filled with data. "We've cracked the code. The structures are designed to work together, to create a barrier that can hold back the convergence. But we need to activate them simultaneously, and we need to do it soon." Elena nodded, her mind racing. The plan was audacious, bordering on impossible, but it was their only hope. She turned to Patel, her voice steady. "Then we make it happen. We don't have a choice." The final phase of the operation was set into motion. Teams were dispatched to each structure, armed with the knowledge and technology needed to activate them. Elena, Patel, and Chin remained in Switzerland, coordinating the effort from the facility's command center. The tension was palpable, every second ticking by like a countdown to oblivion. Volkov stood by Elena's side, his presence a steadying force. "This is it," he said, his voice low. "The moment we find out what we're made of." As the activation sequence began, the world watched in silence. The structures came to life one by one, their energy merging into a single, colossal wave that surged into the sky. The cry returned, louder and more powerful than ever, but this time it was not a warning. It was a declaration. Humanity had risen to the challenge, and they would not go quietly. The sky above the Swiss Alps shimmered with light, the barrier forming just as the first signs of the convergence appeared, a tear in the fabric of reality, a void that threatened to consume everything. The barrier held, but barely. Elena felt a surge of hope, but also a grim understanding. This was not the end. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one that would test humanity's resolve like never before. As the light faded and the world held its breath, Elena turned to Volkov, her eyes filled with determination. "We did it," she said. "But this is just the start. The convergence isn't over. And neither are we. The section ends with humanity's first victory against the convergence, but the threat remains. The stage is set for a larger struggle, one that will push humanity to its limits and beyond. The cry that brought the might of Earth's military has become a rallying cry for survival, a beacon of hope in the face of unimaginable danger. The story is far from over, but the fight has just begun.